まずアナスタシさんがどのようにしてフェルデンクライスメソッドと出会ったかを教えていただけますか？
Yes, it's always an interesting story for everyone how they encounter the method. For me, it was about recovering from a dislocated right shoulder. I had an injury from performing. I was a dancer and I was doing aerial acrobatic things and I dislocated my arm. But actually, it was during my second career as a dancer. I was dancing as a very young person. I'm Greek, born in Australia. I was dancing from a very early age, but I was acting at that point as a professional modern dancer when I had the injury. But before that, I was a scientist. I was a cell biologist in marine plants. And the reason Feldenkrais was very interesting to me was because it wasn't about therapy only. It was education and understanding biology and how we learn to move. And I was a biologist looking at marine creatures, so I spent a lot of time underwater. And Feldenkrais' work spoke to me on other levels other than just healing my injury. It was very interesting intellectually. And my first experience was watching a Feldenkrais teacher working on another dancer who had an injury. And they were doing FI, hands-on work. And I thought it was so interesting what she was doing that I went home and did it to myself. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was creating an ATM from the FI I saw, and it helped me a lot. I didn't even know what it was. And the next day I asked her, what was she doing? And then she said, Feldenkrais. I said, I've heard that word before. And so I was a professor at the time in dance at Melbourne University in Australia. And the training was at Sydney University. So they would give me time off to go to the training. And so I started my training. It was over 30 years ago when this happened, the story I'm telling you. And I could go twice a year for 1 month at a time. And that's where I studied. And that's actually where I met Stephanie Spink. She was an assistant teacher in my training, and we became good friends from that time. After I graduated, I decided I didn't want to be a director of dancing anymore. I wanted to be purely a Feldenkrais teacher. And that was difficult because my reputation was as a scientist and an intellectual dancer, choreographer. To change my image was very difficult. So I left Australia. I was invited to teach in New York with the trainer I graduated from his training in Australia. He opened a training in New York in 1998, 97, I think. And he invited me to come and teach in that program. So I came to New York and I've been in New York ever since. Our work can help you when you study a 4-year program. You change a lot. Your way of moving, your way of thinking, the way you understand your image in the world changes. And I felt like I wanted to change the image of myself, and moving to another place allowed me to completely start from fresh from the beginning with no history. And it was very liberating. Everyone needs to do such a radical thing because it's very difficult to leave your family, to leave everyone you love and start in a new place. However, Feldenkrais lessons can help us, even in our home, change in ways that we want to become better, to become more comfortable in everything we do. So I think I'm now talking about why I want to be a teacher of Feldenkrais. And I think my decision to focus my energy in this one field is because I think it makes a big difference in anyone's life, whether they are at the beginning of life or at the end of life. Right through one life, we all move. And if we can move better, we have a better life. So that's why I do this work. One thing that became very clear to me in my wanting to be a very good teacher was I had to understand the human body better. I had studied anatomy and physiology and many things as a student in university, undergraduate. But Feldenkrais work made me see that I had more questions about the skeleton, how the muscles, the fascia, how our body is, the structure is put together. So I found my teacher in New York, who is not a Feldenkrais teacher, but an anatomy teacher who studied with Feldenkrais when he came to New York in 1981. But she is a professor of anatomy at Juilliard School, which is a very elite arts training school in America. Her name is Irene Dowd. And yeah, and I have been her student and friend since the first year I came here, and I'm still studying with her. Irene is a choreographer and anatomy teacher of the students, and I was her first student, then assistant, and we have made many works together. And now, just in May, she retired after being at Juilliard since 1963. And we are currently collaborating on new projects, new choreographies, new work, and it's very exciting work. So I am hired as a teacher in many Feldenkrais trainings to teach anatomy and to show the students how to understand the movements of the joints, of the bones. And it's not that our habits and our thinking are removed, but we are just looking at the structure. If you say everybody has the same number of bones, the same number of muscles, how we move is very unique, but the structure is the same. And so we should understand the structure. So that's become my hallmark. Everybody hires me to teach this. I also, away from Irene, I also, as a scientist, became involved with a medical doctor who was developing a theory about how the muscles, ligaments, fascia, and bones all work together as one system. And that's another specialty I have. It's called biotensegrity. And I don't know if I talked about it in your training, but it's also a very deep scientific field of study that I teach also to Feldenkrais teachers, the public, and I'm invited a lot to talk about this topic. This is relevant as a subject to the workshop I will teach for you, because one of the lessons, which is about jumping, it very clearly demonstrates the relationship of the skeleton and the soft tissues, how they work together. And I will, after that lesson, talk a little bit about this topic. So I will introduce it in the workshop too. In the background, I am sorry if I don't say your name correctly, but Kaisuke, is that correct? Yeah. In the background, I see a snowboard. Yes. And yeah. And why I bring this up is because in the lesson, when you are going over moguls, you know, your knees have to be, and you have to sit back and you have to allow your knees to be very springy and your hips. And this is exactly the concept behind the lesson, that springiness, which can only happen because of the tension length scenario between muscles, fascia, ligaments, tendons, and bones. It all works together, and that's the field of biotensegrity.
僕がフェルデンクライスのトレーニングに入ったりすごい興味持ったのも、そういうスノーボードをやったりとか、あとスケートボードとかマウンテンバイクも乗るんですけど、それのこううまくなりたかったりとか、あとはそういう地形とかに環境にうまく自分を適応させたりとか、そういうのうまくなりたい。で、特に今回のテーマの中にね、さっき話してくれたそのジャンプ飛ぶっていうこの重力が働いてる中で自分を浮かせるってことにすごい昔から興味があって、最近でもクライアントでやっぱプロのスケートボーダーが来たりとか、活動してるスキーヤーとかも来てくれるので、なんかそういったところにアイデア紹介できたらいいなってずっと思っているので、すごい楽しみにしてます。
Well, I think for Kaisuke and any other practitioner who comes to the workshop, I will give, for the jumping lesson, I will do not a long lesson, it will be short, but I will give you the references so that you can take the full lessons. They are from Alexander Yanai, they are from the series, and you will find, or Dr. Feldenkrais did some very clever things. And I have taught this to the public, and they improve, everybody improves, no matter what condition you're in. People that never jump sometimes feel like they can jump after doing. So it's very interesting. But it will be just an introduction. But the main element that I'm focusing on this workshop is about walking and running. But the reason jumping is there is because when you run very fast, there are times both feet are off the ground. So the real theme of the workshop, in a way, is about standing on two legs and moving from one foot to the other foot, jumping in different ways, 2 feet to 1 foot, 1 foot to 2 feet, 2 feet to 2 feet. There's so many ways we can be from 2 feet moving. So I think people will find traditional Feldenkrais experiences, lying on the floor, doing gentle movement. They will also experience things in standing and walking and maybe jumping. So I will say a little about why walking, running, or even jumping, depending on the type of jump, are very similar. We have to make for walking a very well organized contralateral movement. There has to be a twisting. The shoulder girdle and the pelvic girdle and the legs and the shoulders. There has to be a twisting motion. And we, the human beings, the Homo sapiens, are the only animal that really can do this very efficiently. Our animal friends who have their front legs on the ground, they can move very beautifully, very elegantly, but they have extra support with the front arms on the ground. We have a bigger challenge to make these counter oppositional movements feel very easy, smooth, aligned, comfortable. And that's a problem sometimes. Any deviation, anything, any habit, any injury, anything can throw the balance of smooth contralateral movement out. And we can, through Feldenkrais lessons, restore that easy contralateral movement. So it is a wonderful opportunity to study through Feldenkrais lessons how to free the shoulder girdle, how to free the hips so that the knees don't suffer, so that the neck doesn't suffer, the lower back. These places suffer when we don't move smoothly in a contralateral pattern. And now, because so much of our time, people are spending time sitting, people are not, I'm not sure, I shouldn't say that about people in your culture, I don't know, but I see more and more since the pandemic, since people have been inside more, that these are problems that people are having, and they feel tired. They don't want to walk far. They say, oh, I get tired walking. So it's a good thing, I think, to help people be able to be more upright, improve their posture. That's why I'm choosing the topic. So I think that what I want to share with all of you in this workshop is not just that we can do a workshop and feel better in the time immediately after a workshop, but I'm hoping to introduce or reinforce the idea that you can help yourself. So many people ask me at the end of a lesson, oh, what should I do now? What should I practice? Tell me what to do. And I say, well, practice anything you remember from this workshop or from this lesson. Anything you remember. If you practice to remember something, that is learning. Because if you can repeat it, you learned it. And that's what Feldenkrais is about. It's about learning, actually. And I will say, it is like food. Once you've eaten it, it's gone. You need more. So in a way, do what you remember, but then find a teacher or read a lesson or find a recording, because we need new input. We need to build on what we started and to create that desire to learn more. It's so much better than just repeating a recipe. I say this with full belief because things will happen. You will be injured. Life will bring situations where you might fall, you might something. You need to believe that you can improve yourself, that you don't have to run to someone that is going to fix you. For example, last week I was have another house in another country on the island of Crete in Greece. And I have many trees, and I had to dig the weeds and fertilize, and too much work like that, which I don't do all the time. I hurt my back. And then I had to get on the plane and fly 10 hours to come back to New York. Aeroplanes are terrible for back problems. But as soon as I got home, I got on the floor and I started to do gentle things, and I knew what to do. I wasn't afraid. I didn't worry that I would be unable to move. I knew what to do very gently, for 1 week, every day, a little bit more. And then I went to my colleague, a Feldenkrais teacher, who gave me a lesson, and that fixed things. Now I'm much better. It's why I like Feldenkrais work, because it teaches you, even when you think you can't do something, there is something you can do. Even in your imagination, you can come up with an image of an action, and that can help you. That can start the process to heal and to improve. So I think that will be my focus, to share those ideas about this work and to create a good experience for everyone who comes to the lessons. And I know it's not a long time we're together, but it will be a good taste of another voice, another flavor of the Feldenkrais method for your community. You want to ask me before we finish?
はい、質問というよりは、もう質問全部なんか私が聞きたいことはもうすごく全て答えてくれたので、質問というか個人の感想みたいになっちゃうんですけど、いいですか、コメントしても。
Yeah. Sure.
すごくたくさん素晴らしいお話をしてくださって、本当に勇気と希望が持てたというか、まあ私今こんな状態なので、なんだろう、本当に怪我をした時に、最初の 2,3 日って本当にもうすごく痛くて、なんかまあ自分がプラクティショナーで体のことは分かってるつもりでもやっぱり絶望的だったんですね。で、まあ日が経つにつれて、まあ自分で何が起こってるかっていうのをすごく冷静に客観的にこう観察できるようにもなってきたし、今こうお話を聞いて、まあこう少しずつこう体を観察して引き続きやっていけば、まあなんか今元いた場所よりももっといい場所へ行けるっていうような感覚が、さらに今お話を聞いてこう希望を持てて、迎えるんじゃないかなっていう明るい気持ちになりました。
Yeah, I will say my right shoulder, which for many years it was problematic, even after I finished the training. If I am under a lot of stress, this shoulder will go up like it's still injured, but I feel it and I can say, oh, I don't need to do that. Because once we learn something to protect something, it will be with us forever. We have to differentiate it, improve it in order to go to the next level. So it will take time. It's a process. It takes time. First, there must be healing. Then there must be addressing the protective habits. And then in time, you will get better. All right.
Have a great
Bye for now. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.